They probably don't want to look like this, so like go to sleep. What about the spirit spot? Not necessarily specific.
Oh,
After Thursday. So who's not here last Thursday?
Yeah.
I think I remember. Heard the term.
Sure happy it is today.
What? Fancy Taco Bell, like that adjective. What's a neon LEDs?
Tours and Port or
Ford has no proof.
tours and
The
Port.
photo.
Swear the more I drink, the more dehydrated I get. Like my mouth gets. Yes. Yeah. High side, but not.
Just in the nick of time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the November 17th edition of the Lexington City Council. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and just in the nick of time, Ms. Strawn, thank you. Glad you're here. And all the other council members. First item, if you will all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item is consideration of the agenda. And I'm not aware of any changes or additions or anything. Unless there's an objection, we will approve the agenda as presented. Hearing no objections, it is approved. And I had as a point of personal privilege, I wanted to read a brief message and recognize and welcome Jeremy Carroll. I wrote to you all a little bit ago, Larry Mann and his firm, the Mann Legal Group, have provided legal support to the city for several years. On November 8th, Larry emailed the city manager and his managing partner terminated the contract with the city. I asked Jim to seek support for our meeting tonight, and Jeremy Carroll with Gwynn and Waddell responded positively to Jim's request. Unless council objects, Gwynn and Waddell will provide the interim legal services while city manager prepares an RFP and we seek permanent services in the near future. I anticipate we will formalize the interim agreement at our next meeting, which is December 1st. You may recall Jeremy has represented the city in the past with some complex matters that we encountered. He is a Washington Lee politics major and a George Mason law graduate. His firm, Gwynn and Waddell, has 8 attorneys with 150 plus years of experience. Their firm is a full service firm focused on local government law. Jeremy, thank you for being with us, and thank you to your firm for representing our city. Additionally, for all of council, I remind myself and council that in our effort for council to speak with one voice, our policy is to first raise an issue or legal matter with the city manager. City manager will decide to seek the attorney's guidance and support as needed. And are there any questions from council on those arrangements and way of moving forward?
No.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. Jeremy, welcome. And thank you to your firm for the support in the past and the current and in the future. Look forward to working with you. Next item on the agenda is presentations, and I'd like to call on Dr. Ranoni, John Ranoni with Mountain Gateway Community College. John, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation. Really appreciate. Usually when I come here, I'm asking for money, and there's no money asked for tonight. So I promise. But thank you so much. So really love to have the opportunity just to give you an update about the college. A lot has happened over the last couple of years, certainly with COVID and as it has with everyone else. but also in the last year at the college as well. I'm going to go over a lot of things very quickly, but please ask questions, and I will reference the handout that you were provided. So the college celebrated a 60th anniversary this year. We were really excited. We've been the main campus in Clifton Forge since 1962, and we've had a presence in Rockbridge since 1996. I believe the current location is number 4. I wasn't here then, but we are number 4. This is my 10th year at the college. So some people, I've been really honored to be here for that time. Our service area is very wide. We have a 1,800 square mile service area. We include Rockbridge, Allegheny, Bath, Northern Botetourt, and all the cities. But we have fewer than 70,000 people. So we are definitely the definition of a rural college. As you know, on July 1st of 2022, the college changed its name to Mountain Gateway Community College. I'll explain the reason behind that in a minute. Our annual enrollment is about 1,700 credit workforce and community education students. And of those credit students, we have an abundant 35% of our students are dual enrollment. We serve our 6 high schools, which will next year become 5 high schools when Covington and Allegheny, the high schools merge. And we do serve a number of high schools outside our particular service area, but 35% of our students earn college credit while they're in high school. And many more every year are actually earning an associate's degree before they even graduate. So our graduation is usually weeks before the high school graduation. They will earn an associate's degree before they earn their high school diploma. We have over 80 degrees, certificates, and workforce programs. We serve students from the age of 15 to the age of 80. And we have about 150 full and part-time staff. And we contribute over $40 million to the local and state economy in its economic impact. Many of you probably know about community colleges, but just quickly, community colleges enroll more than 6 million students and represent 40% of all the undergraduate students in America. We are defined as the People's College. And I think just from our description of 15 to 80, we are truly having served not only the underrepresented, but also the underserved. And our cost is a fraction of what 4-year college and universities would be. Students can enroll at Mountain Gateway for less than $2,500 per semester. That's only $158 a credit. We haven't raised, as a system, there's 23 community colleges. We haven't raised our tuition in 5 years. That's great. The bad news is our budget. 39% of our budget comes from state appropriations. Only 39%. In 2001, that was 77%. 55% comes from tuition and fees, and 6% comes from grants and private donations, and your support on an annual basis. And all the localities that support us are more appreciated than you know. That makes up that 6%. Some of our special programs that we have, we do have the only, when I arrived at the college, I was told, well, we're known for 2 things, nursing and forestry. Okay. Well, everyone has a nursing program, but our forestry program is the only 2-year accredited program in the state. We have a workforce division that works with companies on customized training and helping them recruit and I know recruitment is very tough. We are struggling filling positions just like everyone else. But we have worked with not only pre-employment, but also post-hire training. And we work with companies in this area such as Modine, Kendall, Natural Bridge Hotel, and Mohawk, just as in Modine, both in Buena Vista and in Rockbridge County. I think what you may have seen from the front page of the News Gazette on October 26th that we won a $3 million grant from the U.S. Economic Development Authority to assist us with the renovations of the old Courtesy Ford building in Buena Vista. As you know, and your support helps us maintain a presence at the on the golf course, the infamous golf course on Vista Links Road, but that space is not large enough. Okay, so we had a number of individuals who really, I went to them and I said, we need to bring our workforce programs to the Rockbridge region, and they agreed. So during the time of these buildings, we were able to acquire the Ford dealership as well as the old McCormick building, which is right next to it. And the dealership is going to be 18,000 square feet. And we will end up having all of the trade programs, machining, welding, electrical, diesel mechanic, CDL, and other and building trades. But the building is going to be built flexible that when there's a need in some other area, we'll be able to move that out, move that in and something out. We are 85% toward our funding goal for that. It ends up being, with the cost of construction, it will be closer to $5.5 million. However, in the meantime, we are also renovating the McCormick building. So beginning in February, the hope is that we will be able to run electrical welding and electrical plumbing and HVAC training programs right away while the other building is starting its construction. We also offer a senior citizen tuition discount that I'm not sure many people, and it is the best kept secret in the state. Residents of Virginia, 60 or old, or ages of years of age or older, there is an income requirement, can actually take credit classes at no charge, or you can also audit classes if you fit some of that same criteria. In 2019, we launched athletics as a recruiting tool, and we had one sport, and now we have 6 sports. In January, we're hoping to kick off our esports team, which I am sort of excited that becomes the largest one, because so we'll be gaming with universities as well as community colleges across the country. We just found out literally this week that the governor's new initiative about lab schools, we applied for a planning grant and received the planning grant around Information Technology Academy with all 5 school divisions. So our hope is we will be able to have more high school students earn credentials through this it's a planning grant with the hope that we will then apply for a full grant and be able to deliver it both to the schools in the Rockbridge area as well as our entire service area. And we also finished our new strategic plan, which you have in front of you. This is our 6-year new plan called Gateway, no pun intended, to student success. From a fundraising perspective, our educational foundation awards over $250,000 annually in scholarships. In 2016, the former Dabney Promise, now Roadrunner Promise, scholarship was established, and this is basically last dollars. It's free community college, but it is last dollars to cover books, fees, and And we've had students who have needed $50 and we've had students who needed $5,000. So that scholarship, and a lot of that funding comes from localities and private donors. So why do I tell you about the scholarships? We have 65% of our students are first generation college students. The average age of our students are 26. And they also hold 2 to 3 jobs while they're trying to come to school. 60% of our students attend part-time. We're trying to get them to go full-time, but if they have 2 and 3 other jobs. Part of this is in our service area, only 24% of the people in a service area hold an associate degree or higher. Okay. The 24% of our have some college, and 37% have a high school diploma or GED. Median family income is $45,000 in our service area. Per capita income is between 68 and 82% of the national average, while the poverty rate, as we all know, is between 89 and 107% of the US average. Okay, most community college students are less than $400 away from dropping out. They have a flat tire. The likelihood is they're dropping out because number one, they don't have transportation, but number two, they can't pay that $400. We have established emergency funds through our foundation, and we have a number of statewide organizations that are contributing to all community colleges to address this emergency need. It could be utility bill this particular month. Recently, we did a survey, a national survey of basic needs. 28% of our students experienced food insecurity in the past 3 years, the past 30 days. 40% experienced housing insecurity in the previous year. 10% experienced homelessness in the previous year. In 2017, we opened up a campus food bank, and we have it both in Rockbridge as well as the main campus, and as I said, also have student emergency funds. Since the pandemic, we now offer virtual mental health services for all students and for all employees. We offer veteran services on our campus, and we also have 24/7 virtual tutoring services, because what happens is those 2 to 3 jobs, our students sometimes will find it's 9 o'clock and now I'm sitting down trying to do my homework and I have a question. Campus might be closed. So now you have access to 24/7 to a tutor who's not going to tell you the answer, but going to be able to, work through that. And we collaborate with many organizations and social service organizations to really provide many more services to our students. Overall, we serve low and middle income. We really want to help everyone find his or her American dream. We are really focused on the middle majority. The stories are just some of those that we feel that the college has impacted over the last 60 years. And a trained workforce is our business, and that's the language today. So why Mountain Gateway? So mountain symbolizes the beauty of our region and pays tribute to all the mountains that surround our entire service area. The mountains serve as a connecting point between the wide range communities of our services. All localities we feel serve feel a connection to the mountains. And Gateway represents the opportunity for our students toward a future, whether it's an academic journey or broader horizon that they wish to explore. And really, for the last 60 years, the college has provided students with education and training to pave the way for futures. And this is the term Gateway opens the doors to the middle class. Those are my sort of prepared remarks, but I'm happy to answer questions elaborate more on any other particular area.
Thank you, Dr. And members of council have questions. Mr. Alligood.
Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Several years ago, I visited some of my relatives in Florida. And this particular family that I visited had 5 children, all of which in Florida, by the time they graduated high school, had associate's degrees. Florida has been doing this longer than Virginia has been doing this. My question is about the percentage of students locally who are participating in that program where by the time of graduation would have an associate's degree. Would you have a sense on the percentages of student bodies that are participating in that program?
Sure. I would say about 7 years ago, we would only graduate with an associate degree of the dual enrollment students. We would only have about 5 students a year. We are now probably graduating 25 to 35 students. Okay. It takes a special student, certainly skill wise, and it also takes a number of, so dual enrollment puts some burden on the high schools, and the high schools need to have the qualified teachers that meet college level qualifications over high school. So basically a master's degree. Okay. If they don't have a master's degree, we can't award college credit. So we've had students who actually have taken a number of dual enrollment students, and the cost to them is free.
Right.
Okay. While they're in high school, we've also had a number of students who on their own will come to the college in the summer and pay our tuition to take additional classes. They may also participate in something that we've had for a number of years called the Jackson River Governor School, where a student's going to earn, it's basically a STEM academy. They're going to earn about 40 credits over 2 years. And then if you add your dual enrollment for English and other types of things, those students are pretty close to actually completing that. We also have, so on top of the associate degrees, which is about 35 a year, we also have another 25 students who earn a certificate in math and science after their first year. Okay, so they can, so we're probably looking at 50 to 60 high school students are earning some credential while they're still in high school.
Would you have a sense of the numbers for Rockbridge County High School?
So Rockbridge does not participate in the governor's school, but Rockbridge is our largest dual enrollment school on the other side. Okay. So I would say that percentage wise, they would probably be closer to the highest percentage just based on the number of students that we have. I don't have those exact numbers, but I can certainly get those to you.
It's just in talking with others, the sense that I get is that the program for those who participate in it is well appreciated, but that there isn't a lot of participation at the high school. I would have just thought, based on what I saw in Florida when I visited, that it would be well populated with students, because it seems to me a gimme. It doesn't lock people in, but it gives them credentials to open doors.
And it gives them credits that they can, even if they don't come to us, that will transfer to pretty much any university in the state.
And another part that I learned was that they're exempt if they follow the protocol set up, say by UVA or Virginia Tech or wherever they end up transferring into, that there is a direct path to transfer those colleges, eliminating the need for SATs, say.
Yeah. If they complete their associate's degree, you're absolutely correct.
With a minimum GPA.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if they get their associate's degree, they're getting at least a 2.0.
Right. I thought it was a great program.
Yes. And then they can start immediately as a junior, and they've saved their family conservatively, even $30,000 to $40,000 in tuition.
Right. And
Yeah.
I would just,
We definitely have room for expansion for
Yeah.
dual enrollment.
yeah, and I would hope that the word gets out.
Yeah.
I think it's a great
Yeah.
deal.
What's the planned enrollment for the new workforce training program?
Sure. So we're estimating probably about 400 annually. That and that program is actually going to be the state and the legislature put money to workforce programs called Fast Forward. And basically anything that leads to an industry recognized credential, CDL, commercial driving license, CNA, the certified nursing assistant. Okay, those types of programs. The state will pay 2/3 of that tuition. The student's responsible for 1/3, but they've also put financial aid. So literally a $4,500 CDL training program could cost an individual as little as $150. Okay, because that's the 1/3, and there's financial aid that could give them as much as 90%. So the plan right now is just to put those industry short-term recognized programs into that workforce center. And then somewhere down the line, we might expand into some credit programs, but right now is to meet the needs of the Modines and so forth, and being able to, meet those manufacturing and even Lehigh and everything else with diesel mechanic. So those are, they were all partners that helped write letters of support for us to actually get get the grant.
Yeah, definitely a need in the community that we hear time and time again. So that's
And
great.
what we're doing is replicating what we have on the other side of the mountain and bringing it here.
Super.
Ms. Alexander.
Yes, Dr. Noni, can you tell us about the curriculum that you have for organizations who want to learn more about their nonprofit responsibilities?
Sure. I should also, I'm going to hear this at the next board meeting. I should also recognize that Miss Alexander is a member of our board. So thank you. Yes, because my background is nonprofits and fundraising and so forth. I created 2 programs. One is a credit program in nonprofit management. So there's a series of six courses, leadership. There's a grant writing class, there's a fundraising class, there's running events and so forth. Those are full semester credit courses. But the other ones that's really been the most popular is 2-hour workshops once a month. And pre-pandemic, I was doing those in person, both in Rockbridge as well as here. And then during the pandemic, turned them all to virtual. We had a better response, so now they're always virtual. And those are 2-hour workshops for any nonprofit. We've partnered with the chamber here and actually delivered workshops in the board's role in fundraising. So any nonprofits out there, these are only $20 to keep things very, very cost effective for a nonprofit. If you take 7 of those, you earn a certificate in nonprofit management as well. And we probably have, in the 4 years we've been doing it, we probably have put through about 300 nonprofit individuals, but also board members. Okay, so if you're on a nonprofit board, it's these workshops are geared for you, about learning about what the annual fund is about, or the or you're thinking about running a capital campaign. These are the things you need to question, and also did a workshop on fundraising during the pandemic and keys to nonprofit sustainability. So these are short-term types of things, and they've been very popular. And when I think that, well, I may have saturated the market, then there's another whole group of nonprofit leaders, as well as board members who have participated. Thank you for that.
Any other questions council has?
Just one short follow-up. The CDL program that you mentioned.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, maybe slightly less than that, Walmart had announced a big push for hiring CDL certified truck drivers and had a training program to help fill their needs
Right.
for that. I'm just throwing it out. Did they partner with you to help fill those needs?
They didn't partner with us. They may have run their own program because of their size. But we have had graduates of that program go work for Lowe's, Walmart, etc. Okay, on a 1 and 2 basis, not as an abundant around. But our program, you can finish in as quickly as less than 60 days.
Wow.
And be as a trainee in most of these companies. And that's the beauty of it. And we actually have 2 full-time instructors because the demand, CDL's become our largest program, actually. So that's why we actually have 2 full-time instructors
It's
led by a woman instructor.
Quickest turnover too, I guess, 60 days.
It is. Nationally, they say 85 to 90% truck drivers turn over annually. So yes, I think the CDL instructors will never be without a job.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Noni, thanks for being with us and bringing us the message and for not asking for money.
Yeah, thank you.
We anticipate.
That'll be next time.
Yes, I was going to say we anticipate that in the future, to be sure.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to Ms. Alexander for serving our community as well as all of Lexington on your board. I know she's a great contribution or provides great contributions to your board as they go about the work, and very grateful for the work that you've done for the past 10 years in our community, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the Plan Development Mixed Use Zoning Text Amendment presentation. Arnie, welcome, and look forward to learning.
Good evening to you all. As you know, we're going through a number of zoning text amendments. This is the latest one before you last time about small cells. And now we're talking about planned development districts. It's just a quick overview, and please, this is just a quick highlight. I was asked to give you before this gets scheduled for a public hearing, but please interrupt me whenever you like for questions. Planned development is that different zoning district. It's not your traditional zoning district where you have a very sort of limited list of permitted uses, limited list of conditional uses, limitations on height, setbacks, all those physical characteristics. This is the one where you have a little bit more flexibility. You provide more information up front and almost to the site plan development stage. So you're providing a good bit of information. And then if it is something that is desirable, meets comprehensive plan, then you get, in essence, variances granted to you through this process. So again, this is a district that is not your traditional zoning district, and it is set up primarily for flexibility. Planning Commission has been working on this for a whole year now, and we do have a land use strategy. It's 5.4 in the comprehensive plan that directs us to explore the creation of a new planned unit development zoning district focused on unique and flexible mixed residential development. So that comes out of a brand new comprehensive plan. In this round of zoning text amendments, we did a number of housekeeping measures. I believe there were 15, and now we're into the second of the 4 larger items, more intensive items. Planning Commission, as I mentioned, has been working on this for a year. They did hold a public hearing on this September 22nd, and they continue that over to October 13th. And they do recommend approval of a zoning text amendment for a new planned development mixed use district. The recommended PDMU zoning district is proposed to be a base zoning district and not an overlay district. Is allowed only in 2 opportunity areas. I provided you with the opportunity areas map on the second part of the presentation, at least the second page of it, which shows you that those 2 opportunity areas are out East Nelson Street and also out South Main Street. It not only allows, but actually encourages a mix of uses both vertically and horizontally. provides flexibility that is not allowed in your traditional zoning districts, as already mentioned, requires a minimum of 3 acres in size. City manager had a question about that, so we also provided you with 2 maps, sort of working maps that we had put together during the planning commission discussions that show you the acreages of the existing parcels in those 2 opportunity areas, just to give you a sense of how many are currently 3 acres. But please also keep in mind that you can aggregate parcels to get to the minimum 3 acres in size. The zoning district that will be requested by property owners. In other words, we're not going to rezone the properties. So they will be, as the property owner would like to redevelop the property potentially, because most of these, if not all of them, have something already on it, some sort of development. So if there's a desire from the property owner to come in and perhaps do a mixed use development, they would be requesting it, and we're going through the rezoning public hearing process. There is a 30-foot setback to any surrounding residential zoning districts. Also, an encouragement in the code for the applicant to hold a public meeting prior to the submittal of a PDMU rezoning application, which is a little bit different, but thinking that if the applicant, not so much the city, but if the applicant would get out and do a bit of legwork beforehand, before submitting an application, maybe the public could have a little bit of feedback into the design. Changes to the existing PUD language includes a complete rewrite of the intent and purpose section. It's a reduction in the open space requirements. And quite honest, I think what we had of existing in open space requirements for PUD was really unworkable. Just required far too much open space, and considering the 2 areas that we're talking about, they're largely built out. There's very little open space there currently. It's also elimination of a density maximum of 20 dwelling units per acre, which gets to the flexibility. 20 dwelling units per acre is basically what we allowed in our not mixed use district, but our multifamily zoning district. So if there's no flexibility in PUD or PDMU to go above and beyond what's allowed, then there's not any flexibility, and it's not as much of a need for a planned development district, in my opinion. One thing that was added during the public hearing process was the addition of a list of findings or criteria for the planning commission to use when they're making a decision or a determination whether or not to recommend approval. So now we have a set of findings, if you will, but the criteria, again, for the review process and for their decision for a recommendation. And there's also a requirement for common open space to be maintained by the property owners association. So if it's a pool area, any kind of picnic area, open space, or common area within the building, that they have to develop a property owners association for the continued maintenance of that. That's all I have for presentation, other than to mention there have been 16 planning commission meetings so far, and we have posted minutes from all of those meetings online just to keep people informed if they wanted to go take a look at that list of minutes from all the planning commission meetings where plan development mixed use was discussed. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Sigler.
At your public hearing on the 22nd, and then that was continued to the 13th, did you have any public comment about this?
We had, I want to say 3 or 4
Okay.
people speak.
You don't need to. I just was wondering if it was helpful, and if that's why you continued it, because you had good feedback. So that's good. It's great.
I happened to bring the minutes from the October 13th meeting. And actually, that's when we were following up and didn't have any additional public comment. But the meeting before that, we had 3 people at least speak. And to give a little shout out, or to uplift Gail McLeod a little bit, she really brought forward that idea of having a set of findings, and that was really useful, and that was included.
And we happen to have several architects, so it was nice to hear from their perspective. If this was helpful to have as much flexibility as there is in this.
I attended that public hearing, and actually it started to go over my head because we did have a lot more architects in the room than non-architects, I think, actually. It's pretty good.
Arnie, just to confirm, it's going to require a 3-acre parcel to be able to utilize this. And land can be put together, but for the most part, there are not too many 3-acre plus lots in these 2 zones. on page 6 of 87, it looks like the southern side of Maple Lane, all those houses. I was just curious, the line drawn incorporating those.
I will have to go back, and I think you're right, because that 1.6 acre parcel in the middle of that
Right.
area, that should be the boundary, not going back to the houses on Maple Lane.
Okay.
But you're absolutely correct.
Just wanted to make sure, folks, that we would do some type of notification if we were putting them in a development zone,
We
living
certainly
happily in a residential.
don't want to scare folks,
Yeah.
but that could be just the interpretation. If you look on the page 2, the opportunity areas, you see the more rounded boundary there.
Right.
Perhaps we were just following that to provide that extra information, but
Very good.
that is not currently where the C2 zoning district is.
Gotcha. Thought so. Just wanted to make sure of that. Excellent. Any other questions for Arnie? Mr. Alligood?
And just to clarify, when the discussion was happening about this, the point was made about the parcels needing to be contiguous.
Right, it doesn't make any sense because you have to have a certain amount of acreage. If you have an acre and a half here and an acre and a half there with something in between, you don't have enough together. So yes, they have to be contiguous.
Right.
To meet that 3 acre minimum.
So it's a little detail.
Very good. Any other questions? Hearing none, Arnie, thank you for being with us and carrying this forward in your leadership on the Planning Commission. Next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing on consideration of amending the noise ordinance. And I will, sorry, I jumped right over. Yep. Caught it. Next item is actually 5.3 fiscal year 2023 first quarter financial report. Jen, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. I won't be offended that you tried to skip me. So in your meeting packets that Janie sent around last week, you saw the fiscal year 2023 first quarter report. And I'd like to share just a few highlights from the first quarter. Under the general fund in our revenue, you'll notice that meals and lodging taxes are continuing the trend we saw in FY22 and are surpassing our budgeted expectations. Sales tax collections, while strong, are lagging behind budget by about 11%, however. And interestingly, the actual dollar amount that meals and lodging are ahead of budget essentially cancels out what we're lagging seeing on the sales tax side. Budgeting for the cigarette tax was a bit tricky, being that it is a new tax for us. So for the first quarter, we have collected roughly 29% of what we had budgeted. Building permits are outpacing budget due to a large renovation underway at the hospital. And while collecting 82% of budget in one quarter looks good, we need to remember that this is actually only 0.4% of the city's revenue budget. Interest rates have increased faster than we anticipated when budgeting, so you'll notice use of money and property is also tracking ahead of budget. The city received the second tranche of ARPA funding in the first quarter, so you'll see our federal revenue looks pretty incredible. Property taxes, miscellaneous, and recovered cost collections look low, but these collections come in unevenly throughout the year, so I see no reason for concern at this time. Moving on to the expense side, I see no surprises or concerns. You'll notice judicial administration has only spent about 4% of the budgeted amount, but these expenses are generally paid annually, and we've not yet been invoiced for those. Only 8% of Public Works State Street maintenance funds were spent in the first quarter, but as I believe everyone is aware, a major paving work has started this week around the city. Moving on to the school fund. The school fund appears to be tracking closely to budget for the first quarter. On the expense side, you'll likely notice 45% of the operations and maintenance budget was spent in the first quarter. However, many of these expenses are annual and they're paid at the beginning of the fiscal year. Moving to the utility fund, Revenues seem to be performing as expected and tracking to budget. This is always an area we watch very closely, however. You'll notice under the expenses, capital projects line looks like it's out of line for the budget in the first quarter. However, once we approve the carryovers from FY22 for the Diamond Hill area project, that'll put us back in line. The equipment replacement fund is tracking close to budget. I will be coming to council in December with a proposal for financing the ladder truck, which we are expecting to take delivery of in mid to late January. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Ziegler.
Question about just the interest earned, because I think the mayor had asked a question before about what we had budgeted, what we thought our interest rate might be, but do we expect that to continue to increase now that we've received the additional roughly $4.6 million in federal funds? I know some of those funds will be spent,
Right.
but that further boosts our coffers, if you will. And are we, first of all, are we permitted to earn interest on those federal funds? Because sometimes you're not permitted to, but will that help that line item?
It will. So when we did the budget for FY23, we anticipated a 1% interest rate, trying to remain conservative. But for the month of October, we actually earned around 3%. So if we extrapolate that out and we just continue the 3% where we are, we're looking at maybe an extra 500,000, 600,000 that we hadn't budgeted for.
Okay. Wow. So we could earn just an interest. Am I right? And almost $1 million that will earn an interest.
In the month of October, we earned 80,000, slightly more than that. So if we kept that number for another 8 months, that's where we'd get the extra 640,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
In the school fund expense, you mentioned many of the expenses in this category are annual expenses paid at the beginning of the fiscal year. What are some examples of those expenses that we pay at the beginning?
That's an excellent question. I'll have to come back to you on that. I know Erin over at the schools, she did tell me a few examples, but unfortunately I did not include those in my notes.
Okay. And the interest we earn, is that just through the Virginia investment pool, or?
Most of our funds sit with the LGIP, local government investment
Okay,
pool.
yeah, that's fine.
And that's where we did earn the 3% interest
Yep.
last month.
Other questions for Jen? Very good. Thank you, Jen. Now on to public hearing 6.1. Looking to continue the public hearing on consideration of amending the noise ordinance, and I'll call the public hearing continued and ask the city manager for any observations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't go through what I introduced to City Council at our last meeting. I will note that based on some of the comments that were made at our last meeting, I did make a number of changes. I think there was a pretty much consensus to City Council that there should be some variation of the enforcement on Friday, Saturday nights, as opposed to Sunday through Thursday nights. And so I did make that change in various sections of the code. Primarily, page 8, you'll notice several highlighted areas there. Also, there was a comment about construction ending later in the evening that had been in the draft. And I just shortened that from ending at 7 p.m. That is. There was some comment about trash trucks, refuse trucks in the community. Issues of perhaps it's not fair to have private trucks regulated differently than public trucks. I did make some points as to why I believe it's a public necessity that our trucks go out on the road earlier. They're out there constantly on the road. We have narrow streets and we do have heavier traffic if they're out there at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, including school traffic. So from the standpoint of both difficulties for the public dealing with the trucks up and down the street, making multiple stops, as well as the crews going back and forth between trash cans when there's heavy traffic and people trying to get around trucks. I just don't feel that's apples to apples there. If a private company has a truck coming in at 3 a.m, they can schedule them come in at 10 o'clock in the morning, and that's just a difference in their business plan. It's not a public necessity or a public safety issue. So that was my rationale for not including that. There was also some comment about having a decibel map, if you will, or I can't think of the word for it. Mr. Alligood, what's the word I want there?
A matrix, like a matrix or a chart or
Um,
something?
Ambient sound level. based
Ambient
on
noise
decibels,
levels,
yeah.
a map of the city showing the ambient noise levels as they are.
Right. And I just feel that that's a bit more complicated than we need at this time. We have complaints, we have issues, but we are able to cope with those issues without having something quite as complex as that in place. So those are the changes that I made. Certainly I'd like to see a council act on that this evening. However, if there are issues that you feel that still need to be brought into the ordinance, happy to consider those changes. Or if there's the public comments made that we feel like you feel needs to be incorporated, not in any particular hurry to move forward. Just always like to get the business accomplished when it can be accomplished effectively. So that is my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. And I don't think anyone has signed up to speak to this. I didn't see anyone sign up on the list, but would ask if there's anybody who would like to speak to this matter related to the noise ordinance. Hearing none, we'll ask for council's response or observations or input. Yes, sir.
I there's a question that I had before and just would love to maybe poll council on it. That the criminal penalty, if we get to that, not start at a class 2 misdemeanor. It'd be my preference that we align with maybe the county and other small cities that it is a class 3 if it gets to that after civil. Just would like to remove the necessity of appearing before a judge, but the potential for jail time. I don't think that really is needed. I just would love to poll the, kind of the rest of council if they're in agreement.
I agree.
And then I had another question. One of the things that was really helpful from the last meeting when we actually asked Officer Dreelan her thoughts on enforcement. And as I understood it, it sounded like the use of the noise permit, even though it's not codified anywhere, was actually helpful because for a number of reasons, it allowed the folks that might be making the noise to understand what was required of them. And then it also allowed enforcement for the Lexington Police Department to show up at an address and to say, may I please speak to this person? It was a person that was responsible. And I just didn't know if we should put that into the ordinance, if it was necessary, or if there was some way that we could make sure that that is the policy. Because I think we found that we actually didn't have a policy, except it's something that's been working and has been in practice. And I'd love to kind of copy Harrisonburg and a lot of places that have that just for the good of the public.
Certainly.
And I like that too, using the permit, because in the way the ordinance is now, you can't even use an amplified system without a permit. And I like that better than putting decibel limits. I think everybody, for the reasons you explained and just in general, people shouldn't just be able to have amplified speakers at a protest or rally or something without going through the city.
And I would ask to hear from Chief Green on this at some point. Because I understand that, equipment will be required to be purchased in order to do this. And, given how long it takes to get stuff these days, that might take her several months. So I don't want to pass something with no actual mechanism to make use of it. So for those reasons, I would feel comfortable sort of tabling this for a while. I don't know that it's necessarily urgent, and maybe it's not something we need to take up at our next session. I mean, would that be amenable to hold off for a little bit on this.
I'd be perfectly fine with that. And just one more, just point of clarification that might be helpful. One of the items, one of the ways that you might make noise that is exempt from this policy is a band performance or practice and other school-sponsored activities on the grounds of a public or private school, college, or university. And I would love to just clarify if a loud party on university property in a university-owned building is considered school sanctioned essentially, and therefore exempt. If they happen to be making noise at a fraternity house, for example, and if that's on school property and it's a school event, if that's now exempt, given our policy. Just would love to clarify if that's where we are with that, with our neighbors.
I would suggest, because we're looking at it as an ordinance, is seek some guidance from our council. Perhaps maybe prepare this evening, may need to come back to us, but also hear the idea of having Chief Green come and affirm the tools that she would prefer to have in the method. It's safe to assume the city manager has worked with her and this comes with her support, but I hear you. I'd like for her to come and affirm these details and perhaps talk about the process in dealing with this. Again, as David pointed out at our last meeting, we had one person complain and get crossed up with the noise ordinance. This isn't a chronic problem that we've been facing in the community. So seeking an update as opposed to perfection may be a good outcome for this. But Jeremy, would you like to make any comments? And I'd ask you to grab the microphone there as we're recording.
Well, I have reviewed the ordinance and I reviewed it from the standpoint of is it legally valid and enforceable? And it certainly passes muster from a policy perspective. If there are issues that members of council want to address, it can be adjusted certainly through the amendment process. I think Mr. Ziegler raises a good point about that band. Honestly, that I read over that. I didn't even pick up on that and think about that from that perspective. University owns fraternity houses, as I understand it. If there are bands there, what is a band? If you are pursuing a criminal prosecution, that would be a defense. I would think a criminal defense attorney would use to charge. Maybe not as much of a concern on the civil end, perhaps. To the question of equipment, not as important on the civil end because you have a plainly audible standard there. You don't necessarily have to have the objective standard of the decibels for the civil violation, but you would for the criminal violation. So you'd have to go through that equipment procurement process if you're going to enforce this criminally. And I don't know about the permitting question that was asked about whether the permitting should be written into the ordinance. I would have to study that a little bit further. I do recall from many years ago when I was a student at WNL that people would go down and sign up and get their noise permit. And there was the value of having an individual there who signed that document. So I can certainly understand that point. Whether that means it needs to be written into the ordinance or whether that just gives us the individual to whom we approach and potentially charge with a civil violation, that I'm not sure of. I suspect the permit would just be evidence that would be available to demonstrate who would be the responsible individual. Wouldn't necessarily need to be written into the ordinance, but I'd like to understand a little bit more about the permitting process before I could really give you a good answer on that.
Well, that would seem to be a disincentive to going and getting a permit if you.
It would be, but yeah, I suppose that is true. So maybe you do want to write in a
We need
mandate that
some sort
they
of
get one.
reward feature that would make people want to do that. So
Yes,
Right. But there would not necessarily be a problem with writing that as part of our ordinance to require folks that are going to have a party
No, and it, yeah, no, it would not be a problem. You could add it to this ordinance. I'm just wondering if this is where it goes or does it go into some permitting section of the code? I'd have to get a little more familiar with the code to see exactly where you would include it.
That's fair.
You certainly could add that.
There you go.
Right now, our current ordinance says, except in public emergency, it shall be unlawful for a person to make use of sound amplifying equipment or loudspeakers in such a manner that the sound or noise thereof is audible to the public without written permission from the city manager.
Mm.
I mean, I like that. If you're going to use that kind of equipment, you
Right.
have to get.
And the city manager has delegated that to the police department to
Mhm, which is
obtain.
Fine.
Gotcha.
One question for Jim. Have you talked to WNL or the hospital just to verify that this will not cause issue with their trash pickups?
I have not.
Okay, because for me, that would be helpful to know, because we're making assumptions. They may have the same constraints we do, so I would just like to verify that they can work around this requirement.
I'll speak with them and find out what concerns they may have.
I have a comment. One of the items that I brought up at the last meeting was the project that I want to say it was roughly 10 years ago, not clear about whether it was 10 years, but let's say 10 years-ish. Kendall had proposed to install 1,000 horsepower worth of electric generators at the backyard fence line of residential housing just off Battery Lane. And they withdrew their application for it, but that being aside, the issue of having 1,000 horsepower worth of generators that, from my perspective, and I'm going to use the word figuratively, are screamers when they run in the backyards aren't addressed of residential units are not addressed in this unit here in our proposed noise ordinance. Something needs to be included in this to keep that from happening.
You know, we already have that too. You have to be careful. Those schools have generators and they run for 15 minutes each week. And we've talked to the neighbors in the past about when is a good time to test them. So I'm not sure exactly what you're looking to have.
Not 1,000 horsepower in the backyard.
Well,
Of
we have noise
residential
limits on
unit.
what you can hear
Right. And I think
already
that,
built into
and that
this.
gets into the challenge if those generators are providing life-saving services
Well, the
to
testimony,
medical facilities.
the
at the-
testimony that happened at that hearing, set of hearings indicated that that wasn't true. Only part of it was true. And the other part was they were going to sell power in there. So it was a different animal that they were proposing. But the issue here is the noise level that was going to be in a residential area that was going to be, again, I'm going to use the word, it was a screamer.
I would think that some of the generators they would have would be for the assisted living as well as the nursing home. And our local hospital has generators as well. So when you talk about schools and healthcare facilities, I'm not sure we have a lot of leeway with that.
They were going to install those generators as far away from their buildings as they could at the boundary of their property line. They weren't going to assume the noise next to their own. They since modified it. I don't think they've installed any generators since. They already have one that's operating back behind the Borden Center. But I wanted it to be considered.
Yeah, a lot of private residences also have generators that also run weekly, and can impact their neighbors when they're running. So it's certainly something in today's day and age that generators provide a valuable service to a lot of people and provide safety and security. And so no one's trying to offend anyone testing it 15 minutes a week. So hopefully we'll just continue to be able to work with our neighbors if they're putting in a generator and hopefully come to agreements on that. And not sure if the noise ordinance is where that needs to be addressed, but maybe that's more talking about building codes and setbacks and so forth. But certainly understand your point and understand that neighbors And in residential neighborhoods that wish to get emergency generators for their home shouldn't be concerned about getting a noise permit or a noise violation testing their generator.
I think we need to give that section a little bit of thought to make sure that people can have their generators and it doesn't conflict with anything in this document.
Right. But, and keep in mind, anytime that we do look at setting policy or ordinances, it's for the entire city. It's not for the neighbors of Battery Lane. Your point's well taken with the concerns that were raised and the outcome there, but we have to look at these policies to ensure that they're for the benefit of the entire community. And if you do find I encourage you to work with the city manager if there's language that or the city manager can work on locating the place and perhaps some language that could deal with commercial generators versus residential generators. But again, as David said, your point's very well taken and very thoughtful. And as the suggestion or request to continue this to our December 1st meeting and or beyond to iron out some of these issues, I welcome and will do so. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, for the purpose of the generating an agenda and publication, do we want to take it off of the public hearing thing so we don't have a continual public hearing and the public wondering if we're actually going to take any action or hear it?
That was going to be my next question of the attorney, if we were okay to close the public hearing and then perhaps in a meeting or two, consider the item.
Yes, you've met your statutory obligation of having a public hearing. The only caveat would be depending on what types of changes and how material those changes are to what we've drafted thus far. I may recommend a follow-on public hearing before adoption. That would be the only possibility. Can you hear me? Okay.
I think so. That one's not as audible as the others, I think, but it does help if you speak directly into
turn
it.
to you and respond to you.
Won't be offended if you look at the crowd. My preference would be to continue the public hearing and have it as a placeholder for our future meetings. Not that we have to take any action, but just to keep it relevant as we discuss it and work on it.
And you could certainly have discussions without public hearings and then bring the public hearing back at a later meeting, even further into the calendar.
Okay.
I think, do you have to re-advertise then? That's always an issue.
Maybe. Again, I think to me, it ties into how material the changes are to what we've already advertised.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Well, we will continue this public hearing and discussion and consideration to our December meeting, unless there's an objection from council. Hearing none, would like to go to 6.2, public hearing and consideration of ordinance 2022-13. Jen.
Good evening. Thank you again. At the end of FY 22, we ended the year with a budget surplus of $1,557,022. So as part of the first quarter budget amendment, I am requesting some appropriations. First, of that 1.5 million, I'm requesting we earmark 300,000 to replace the appropriated fund balance we had built into the FY 23 budget. Second, the utility fund, the W&L master meter MOU, we had budgeted 500,000 in our CIP, but it actually is going to cost us 800,000. So I'd like to request 300,000 from the surplus be appropriated to the utility fund. Next, I'm requesting 264,000 to purchase the 3 plots of land for the cemetery expansion. And then that would leave us with $693,023 of that surplus. At the second quarter budget amendment public hearing, I would request that we allocate 250,000 to the Diamond Hill area sidewalk curb and gutter project. And then the remaining $443,023 be returned to fund balance with a specific earmark that we would like to use that for future capital needs at the Rockbridge County High School. And if you take a look at the RCHS CIP and financing document that was included in the packet, you'll see that in doing that, along with funds that the school already has set aside for future needs, we would not have to finance any of our contributions to the RCHS projects until FY27.
Jen, just a question. Appropriating those dollars here in November 2022 that potentially could help us in 2027 with the high school. Is there an advantage to tonight appropriating those dollars? I mean, they're a part of our fund balance, but or just saying that they're unappropriated fund balance. Just wondering if there's an advantage to that.
No, you're right. And I probably said it incorrectly. I wouldn't actually want to appropriate it now, but I just wanted to put out there that
Okay.
we were kind of recommending
Yeah,
to keep that.
I
in
guess that was
mind.
my word. Yeah, it's kind of, you were earmarking. the-
Yes,
Just in our mind. So,
absolutely.
but really, we could choose to just not earmark them and they'd be fund balance and we would see what interest rates are like in 2027 and not feel any. I mean, we
Absolutely.
have our fund balance.
We would have options.
Yes. So,
We can write a check or we can finance it and use that for other
yeah.
needs.
So I don't think it changes anything that you're proposing, to be quite honest. I just had the question.
No, just clarification. I appreciate that. The next appropriation I'm requesting is $543,060 of state categorical aid, and that is made up of both the state fire grant and state street maintenance funds. Other large appropriations, unless you'd like me to read all the numbers. I assume that's no, though. Okay. So another large one would be $237,307 of fire reserve funds carried forward to FY23 with no appropriations requested for that at this time. In the school fund, the schools actually had a surplus in FY22 of $333,309. And the school board has requested we allow them to carry those funds forward into their reserve accounts as outlined in the document. In the utility fund, we have a large carryover request in the amount of $3.9 million and some change. Included within this are the I&I reduction projects, the Diamond Area Water and Sewer Project, and the Jackson Avenue Area Water and Sewer Project. We have some small appropriations we'd like to carry forward from FY22 to FY23 in the equipment replacement fund. And these are largely relating to vehicles that were ordered in FY22, but were not delivered in 22. In the capital projects fund, I'm requesting to carry over $665,309 for capital projects to be appropriated to various sidewalk improvements, stormwater drainage projects, and dam maintenance, as well as some projects at the Evergreen Cemetery. That's all I have, unless there are questions.
Members of council have questions regarding the numbers. Hearing none, I would ask for your consideration.
I make a motion. Do we have to have a public?
Oh,
Public
sorry.
hearing.
Yes. Got excited. Great report, Jen. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing, and anyone who would wish to speak to this item, please step forward. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, 8:12, close the public hearing and ask for council's discussion and consideration.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-13, incorporating the budget amendments for the first quarter of FY23.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I would just make the observation that I think it was around 2012 or 13 that we really hunkered down on infrastructure being a priority of that council, that set up the plans that we're implementing now and tearing up the streets and repairing all these lines for the future. And it's fun to have been a part of that and to see it coming to fruition and getting things accomplished. It's not sexy, it's not fun, and it really is dirty and expensive, but thankful for the work that's being done. With that, I would ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mr. Ayers,
Aye.
Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Jen. Next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes. The minutes were distributed with your packet. And unless there's an objection, we will approve those as presented. And next item is consent agenda. There were two items on there. The JC's Gobble Wobble, which encourage everyone to sign up if you haven't already, and request from David Wells. And I would ask for, yes, sir.
I think we missed citizens' remarks.
We sure did.
Mhm.
Having a rough night tonight. I'll back up, and I didn't see anyone that had signed up for citizens' remarks, but we always love to hear from the community. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to council on topics not otherwise on the agenda? The deafening roar of the HVAC. I will close citizens' remarks and comments at 8:14 and go on to the consent agenda and ask for council's consideration.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, and roll call vote. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Ayers.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Not aware of any unfinished business and reports and communications. I'd like to call on Mr. Smith for the Blue Ridge Resource Authority.
Nothing to report.
Very good. Main Street Lexington, Ms. Strawn.
Bunch of big dates coming up. The annual candlelight processional and community tree lighting is Friday, November 25th. You'll gather at 5:15 at Main Street, at the Main Street entrance to Oak Grove Cemetery, and step off is at 5:30. On that Saturday after Thanksgiving, Love Lex Lotto begins, and that's Small Business Saturday, so shop downtown. And the Christmas parade is on Friday, December 2nd, and the theme is Sounds of the Season. And then the Jingle Bell Run is Saturday, December 3rd at 10 a.m. So save those dates, mark them on your calendar. That's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you to Public Works. They've been working diligently to get the tree and Hopkins Green prepared for the tree lighting. So thank you to the team at Public Works. Planning Commission, Ms. Strong.
We met on Thursday, November 10th, and we had a public hearing or public comment actually, and approved amendments to the city code for regulation of communication towers, which includes the small cell wireless facilities. And that'll come before council in December. And that's all I have.
And of course, Arnie gave a presentation at our last meeting to get us well versed on small small cell.
Right. Oh, and I will add one more thing, even though we do have one more council meeting before planning meets, but at our first planning commission meeting in December, Echelon will present their plans for Spotswood.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Strawn. Any other questions for Ms. Strawn? Mr. Ayers, Regional Tourism Board.
Yeah, just briefly, tourism met on Wednesday. We didn't take up any business this meeting, but we did receive a presentation from Media One, the digital marketing firm we contract with to provide research and make digital advertising buys. Tourism has partnered with Media One since 2019, and our digital traffic on all our platforms is up 72% in that time period. Starting today through Sunday, the Horse Center is hosting the 34th annual Southwest Virginia Hunter Jumper Association Show and Medal Finals. And also wanted to mention that since our second media tour in mid-October, we've had a number of articles that you probably have seen floating around on Facebook. 20 things to do in Lexington, Virginia, small towns we love, your guide to Lexington, Virginia, 9 small towns straight out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Some of them are actually quite quite good. I hope you take a look at them. And lastly, tourism won't have a regular meeting in December. Instead, we'll join Rockridge Outdoors board members for Drive 2.0's all-day seminar at the Horse Center on Wednesday, December 14th. And that's my report.
What is that event?
It is another Drive 2.0 grant in the amount of $20,000 that but has to be used on outdoor tourism, basically outdoor projects.
Yeah. It's more of a workshop to develop ideas of how to use $20,000 to prop up local outdoor recreation.
And the workshop is a requirement of the grant. So
Perfect. Good work and time well spent, I trust. I don't know, I was just trying to think if the DORA program would qualify as an outdoor recreation, but be thinking about that give you something to talk about at your workshop. Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
No report.
Thank you, sir. Threshold, Ms. Alexander.
No report, but we will not meet again until the fourth Wednesday in January. And we are still trying to recruit new members who have a special interest in affordable housing in Lexington.
Thank you, ma'am. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Thank you. The MSA board did not meet yet. The planned meeting is December 13th. It'll be a combination November, December one meeting. But the news is that the long-awaited information on the wastewater plant modernization is scheduled for either December 6th or December 13th. Date to be determined, but one of those two dates for informing MSA board and the public. It'll be in this room for the wastewater operations, the modernization that I've been reminding people right now. The estimates are floating in the neighborhood of $40 million for that particular aspect. So we'll learn more about it then. End of report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Alligood? Very good. I have no report for you this evening and calling the city manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to the old VDOT site, before we can move forward and entertain any options there, we need to get a request for proposals out, and I've contacted several firms that have expertise that could develop an RFP for our purposes. One firm, the Berkeley Group, indicated they had an interest and could provide that work for us. So I've asked them to put together a work order and some pricing to see what that might amount to, if you will, and what their schedule could be for that. I'm hoping to have something from them in early to mid-January that then could be released shortly thereafter. That RFP could be released and we could then entertain proposals from different developers as to how that site could be used. So that is my schedule at this time for moving that project forward in that regard. Back to the theme of legal counsel, the mayor did a good job of introducing Mr. Carroll. I did want to note that Mr. David Natkin also provided services for us this past Monday when the Building Board Code of Appeals met. He indicated also if there was an appeal to the State Building Board Code of Appeals, that he would be willing to provide us legal counsel at that point as well, so we didn't have to switch horses in the middle of the stream, if you will. Councilmember Ayers mentioned, Strawn mentioned the Spotswood update, so I won't go there. We had some comments at our last meeting about pedestrian safety. I think in two instances, there was some concerns raised. One was on Lime Kiln Road, the crossing of Woods Creek Trail there. Staff has looked at that and we will put crosswalk markings there. So to make it more visible and safer for anyone using the trail when they cross the road there. The second concern that came up was the traffic signals at South Main and Houston Street. And while reviewing those, they can be seen by pedestrians, but admittedly, it's somewhat difficult. So we're going to look at that and see how those signals can be modified or changed So they're a little clearer for pedestrians so that you don't have to spend as much time and perhaps overlook the signal, if you will, because they're not clearly visible. Basically, the only signals at that intersection are the traffic lights themselves. And so you really have to, as a pedestrian, look to see if they're green, red, et cetera, when you're going through any portion of that intersection. As I said, you can actually see that, but it is hard because of the configuration of that intersection and the way those lights are hung at the intersection. So don't have a solution, but we are looking at that. Diamond Hill paving project is underway at this point in time. Sentinel Street, Peyton Street, Marble, Tucker, Maury, and Henry Streets have been paved. Fuller Street will be paved on the 18th tomorrow, Massey on the 21st, and North Lewis from Peyton to Washington Street on the 22nd. And unfortunately, as I've mentioned in the past, Washington and Randolph Street will not be paved this year. It'll have to wait till the spring, as well as the curb and gutter work that will be conducted on those streets as well. Little update on the LPD Police Department and their search for applicants. They did have 2 applicants interviewed recently, and 2 conditional offers were extended. 1 offer was accepted and a contract has been signed. Both of those individuals, however, will need to go to the police academy because they are not certified officers. So we haven't been able to crack that nut yet to get those folks in. The department staff participated in a workshop to prepare for an upcoming active shooter exercise at Washington Lee. Corporals Lewis and Gardner finished crime scene investigation training. Other members of the department trained in night qualifications and taser deployment. And the department is preparing for reaccreditation review in the first week of January, which is a big deal. It takes a lot of time to be sure we're accredited, as we have been for any number of years. In the fire department, there was a incident on Route 11 at Timber Ridge area, and a car was perched precariously on a very steep slope. Took the crews some time to get down to that car, to keep that car from rolling off the slope, and then cut the individuals out who were in the car. And of course, that's a very good example of why we have some very highly specialized personnel and equipment, so that in those very unusual instances, we can perform the duties that are required. Jennifer Bell mentioned that we're ready to finance the ladder truck, because indeed it is still scheduled to be picked up, if you will, or delivered in January. Fire department staff has begun a 3-day rotational training at the new VMI Aquatic Center, so that they can become familiar with those unique spaces and unique activities that will occur there, and provide any kind of safety or responses necessary if something should occur. Firefighter medic James Schindler is attending the Virginia EMS Symposium. And when he brings back the information and training that he receives from that symposium, he will then train the rest of the members of that department. So he provides that in-house training so that he has that and can constantly update the training of all of our members who need that. We are preparing to have a utility clerk office in City Hall. The city treasurer, Pat Delaney, has been working on that with other city departments, primarily finance and public works. And the purpose of this office is to be sure that when the public has questions or need of seeing somebody for utilities, whether it's a cutoff, turn on, new account, paying late fees, they don't have to guess whether or not they go to Public Works or they go to City Hall. All services that are related to utilities now will be handled in City Hall. So you can go to City Hall only, have everything taken care of. You don't have to run back and forth between Public Works. This position had existed in the treasurer's office, so it's not a new position per se. When I say new position, it's a budgeted position, it's a new position, but it won't cost us anything because we're just using the previous position to fill this need. And this was an initiative that, again, Pat Delaney did bring up as something to improve services for the community. So that is the end of my formal report. Although I do want to mention that 3 cheers to the Rockbridge County Pickleball Club, because they were able to, through their own means, purchase and construct a shelter for the pickleball nets that are now at the park. So it's a 24-foot long structure, 4 feet high, that holds 2 22-foot long nets. So they did a good job of doing that at their own initiative. Of course, RARO helped on that, but great to see the community involved, even in those little small things that make our community a better community. And I'll take entertain any questions you might have.
Mr. Alligood.
Two things. Thank you for your report. And kudos certainly to Mrs. Delaney. This utility clerk position is long overdue. And in my own situation, I have been there and gotten the you got to go this way thing. And I can only imagine how many times that's happened. So kudos again. The other point or the other thing I would like for you to comment on is a report on that major water leak and evaluations at W&L.
We did find that due to the work that W&L did when they discovered the leak, that our water usage did decline very significantly. We understand that the leak was in their fire service, that they're responsible for the fire service as part of the fire safety equipment for the building. We've evaluated how much water has been used, which is an estimate. We have a monthly flows that we've evaluated for about a 2-year period of time. And you can clearly see on that graph that for the last 3 months or 4 months, water usage has been inching up there. And then it shot up about a week and a half ago when the break was discovered. And since then it's gone down very dramatically. So looking at sort of those peaks over the last 2 to 4 weeks, that's when we ascertained most of the water was lost, if you will, because the leak seemed like it might have been a small leak and then expanded pretty dramatically at some point in time. And that's when you saw a greater water loss. So I have reached out to some of my contacts at W&L and informed them of this, and I have not communicated further with them at this time.
Thank you. Looking forward to hearing further information about that.
I'm glad to hear that the water sewer project on Diamond Hill, Green Hill is coming to an end. It's been a long 16 months. I'm counting the months. It's been a daunting task, not only for the contractors, but also for the citizens who were affected. But each time I would hear something, I would stress how poor the infrastructure was and how dangerous it really could have been for everybody. So I think it's, as far as I can tell, it's much appreciated. And once I think they see the streets don't look like Baghdad was bombed anymore, I think they'll be fine and very happy.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. You and all the residents of that area have been very patient and very supportive, and it really made things smoother than you might imagine with a project of that scope. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just pile on and say thanks to Randy Hostetter and his crew who have been tearing up the streets and replacing these pipes. I think they've been very attentive and responsive to citizens as well as to city concerns. So express that appreciation. Also, I would suggest that most of our city employees are appreciative of their job and go about the work that they do humbly and professionally, which is always appreciated. And just want to give a special thanks to Trent Roberts and Steve Polk, who have been in the limelight and in the newspaper the past couple or week or so related to the Washington Lee appeal. I thought they did a good job representing themselves and representing the city on that contentious issue, but thankful for the work that they do. I think they would rather spend their time inspecting and consulting to ensure safety of our buildings and in our community. And they're back at that business full time and perhaps not in the news quite as much. And the other, I appreciate the city manager bringing up the changes or addressing the pedestrian safety. One of the things that Ms. Waters brought forward is just in general, people making better decisions and being more neighborly, if you will, with pedestrians, bike riders, folks on cell phones, getting our community to be more thoughtful towards one another is always a good message. So I'm grateful for her bringing that forward and the work that the city staff has done to do that, to continue to make our community a very safe environment. Any other questions for the city manager on his report?
I just have one comment. I would echo your comments about unsung heroes in our staff, and that starts at the top. You don't get, you frequently do not get the credit that you deserve for herding the cats that is city council and all of the work that you do. And I just want you to know you are appreciated very much.
Thank you. I've always felt that. Thank you.
You always get the floggings for sure, but we do love you. Next, city attorney, Jeremy, welcome and look forward to your report. We've been waiting all night.
I'm sure. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and no report for you this evening. Thank you.
Outstanding, outstanding. Any questions for the city attorney? Very good. Next item is new business, and I greatly appreciate Chief Dickerson and his some of his staff waiting patiently through our entire meeting, and invite you to city manager, if you want to introduce it.
I will give you a brief summary. I think most of you know that, of course, or recall that at one point in time, early in this year, we had a compensation study conducted. We were able to implement most of that study in the July 1 budget. I did hear from the staff at the fire department that some of the compensation figures or comparables that we were using didn't seem to make sense to them, that they were pretty sure that compensation in some of our nearby departments was higher. Did ask the consultant about that. She said, no, we've got good data, and it was good data, but it just didn't include all of the compensation some of those departments were giving with regard to career development. And they had been giving out, if you will, certificates or stipends for career development that occurred in those departments that was bringing real value to those departments, real value to those communities. So Chief Dickerson asked if he and his department could put together a program reflecting what they felt were the very real applicable areas of training that would bring most value to the department and the community. Chief Dickerson did that with several of his officers, brought back a really great plan, much more economical plan than I had thought, and also very responsive, again, very, very responsive to what value this training brought to the department and to our community. There weren't any fluff certificates in here. So I was, pleased to see that. Very much respect the work they did, very professional work. I don't have any other thoughts to share other than, given the expense of the projected expense of this program, I think it's around $39,500. And annually at this juncture, we're getting over $37,000 in excess fees for safety response. I should say in this quarter. So for the fiscal year, it'll be significantly higher. As the the finance director said earlier, our other revenues are on track. We see a few weaknesses here and there, and we see some strengths, but overall, talking to her and the treasurer and the commissioner of revenue, our revenues are on track. So I'm very comfortable saying I'd like to see city council approve this plan that has been set forth, improve the compensation for our fire department staff who get the kind of really excellent training that really benefits us dramatically. I'm completely supportive of this report and of this program, and I'll let the other guys take over from here.
Thanks for your time tonight. Really appreciate you considering this. I've also got to thank the city manager for his tremendous support. This is an initiative that I had tried in years past a couple times and didn't get off a go. But the greatest thanks tonight goes to these three gentlemen: firefighter EMT Brian Emery, firefighter advanced EMT Matt Spencer, and firefighter medic Wes Harlow. They really should be the guys answering your questions because they wrote this. I gave them the groundwork. I gave them the framework. If you pass this tonight, this is a monumental growth in a 11-year-old career department. This brings us up to, this is modeled after, but others are here in the Valley, but tailored uniquely for Lexington and the types of services that we provide and the skill sets that we bring. The real winner here is the citizens, because there's an incentive for these folks to take time away from their family and go pursue more training and bring that additional skill set to the citizens, like we did on Timber Ridge the other Saturday or Sunday morning, assisting a neighboring department with a technical rescue. Some facts and stuff that I think you'll find interesting. We've broken this thing down into levels or tiers. Each level takes about 170 hours of classroom and practical training. Some of those courses aren't even available every year. You're traveling for some of that. You're, time away from your family and home life. 53% of our current staff qualify for level 1, 20% for level 2, and a little over 6% for level 3. 79.99% of your career firefighters who are responding to your call have either an associate's or a bachelor's degree. It's a bit of a mix of a blue collar work, a skill, a trade, and there's some thought that goes into some of these things. Other side of my paper. I knew I had the notes. We're an 11-year-old organization. Total years in the fire service of the 15 firefighters, we left Trent and I out of this because we're so old, it would skew the numbers.
And can't teach you old dogs any new tricks.
17.2 years is the average number years of experience that these folks bring to an average of 5.6 years as a career firefighter in the city of Lexington. And I'm not going to read the whole rest of this thing to you. We put together, I think, a pretty decent summary. There's a long version. There's an appendix that helps you if you want to know what DPO stands for, because it's the driver pump operator class, not to be confused with the DAO, the driver aerial operator class you got to have to drive the new ladder truck that's on order. I think we got a small credit on that this week because there's a automatic lubrication system that's on back order, and we eliminated that from the order because they can't get the part. They don't want to hold up the rig.
Right.
So I will entertain questions on the career development plan. While we were working on this, the Rockbridge County firefighters found out about it and wanted a similar thing. And I think they just beat us over the finish line when they got approval of it a week or two ago.
Members of council have questions for the chief and the firefighters.
I'll ask one. So going from the different levels, level 1 to level 2 to level 3, is it the same pay bump or different?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, for those big tiers, and then we have some smaller amounts for things like a car seat technician. We're trying to send all of our officers, the lieutenants, through a Virginia Fire Officers Academy, which is sponsored by the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association, which I'm a member of. But we really let a bunch of young, bright lieutenants and captains run that. And it's a week-long residence leadership development. It's easy to teach somebody the skills. It's very difficult to teach somebody to lead people. And we don't want them managing people. We want them leading people. And it's one of the best programs I've ever seen. Usually held during the summer on a college campus. I've been working with them to try to get it relocated here one summer to catch a greater attendance from Valley fire departments, but also to have that blood and that infusion in, at VMI or Washington Lee. So we have some smaller amounts for bachelor's degree, associate's degree, car seat technician. We're the only public safety agency in all of Rockbridge County, Lexington, and Buena Vista that has people certified a 40-hour class to help people install their car seats for their kids. Another little service that we provide.
Chief, can you, I think you said.
Dennis, pull your microphone around there.
All right, I think you said this before, but I just want to make sure I understand. Are you years of service with the 15 personnel? You said, what is the average length of service for you guys?
The average in the fire service is
Yeah.
17.2 years.
Okay, but within Lexington, within the department,
5.6.
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that stacks up to other fire departments and other localities. That seems pretty high.
Again, I'm old and I've talked to peer fire chiefs, and used to be that people came into this business for a career and they stayed 25 years or so. And now all across the country, we're seeing people do this 5 years and then they want to go do something else. A friend of mine spent the last couple of years of his career as the fire chief in Charleston, South Carolina. He noticed an uptick in their turnover, and he started personally exit interviewing people. And most of them were not unhappy. They're like, yeah, I tried this, I did this, I was a fireman, I'm going to go into banking, I'm going to go into teaching. Just the young workforce of today is very different than working for that defined benefit pension for 25 years in one place. I'm really proud of the stability that we've gotten. You know, we've had some turnover, but we've got people like Matt who've been here from day one.
So Chief, when you do lose somebody, what are what do you hear in the exit interviews?
They want to spend more time with their kids. It's a grueling work schedule. I know everybody thinks that it's a pretty easy work schedule because there's unproductive time where they might get to sleep. You don't sleep really well in a firehouse with the radio going and these guys snoring and belching and the CPAP machines going and all that kind of stuff. They average 56 hours a week. Some pay periods or a 2-week pay period are 96 hours for them, and some are 120 hours in 2 weeks. It's physically demanding. As I can tell you, if I was not the fire chief, I would not be riding fire trucks. I'd have given that up years ago. There's a tremendous mental burden. The things that you can see and accumulate across the career and the trauma, our American health system is broken and we're wedged right in the middle of that. We see that every day. We average 8 or 9 calls a day, and having an 18 or 20 day call day is not unusual anymore. We did almost 600 runs in FY22, covering for other just EMS runs, covering for other EMS agencies around here who couldn't muster a crew to cover their own call. 25% of our EMS runs. I'll also tell you pretty proudly, monthly, the fire chiefs and deputy chiefs from Rockingham, Harrisonburg to Lexington and Rockbridge meet for lunch. The other group have been doing that for a long while. They just this year invited Chief Ramsey and I from Rockbridge County to join in. Never before has there been fire chiefs who have been able to had trouble filling positions. Lexington currently is the only fire department of that whole group that is fully staffed. There's some loyalty and there's some dedication, and the city's a good place to work.
Well, this proposal that you brought forward, I'm elated to hear you mention the county has beat you to the finish line or has adopted something similar. One of the anxieties when I first read this was concerned that we have a better carrot in the county, and there's going back and forth, whether it's public works or police department or fire. And the collaboration and work that you do with Chief Ramsey is great, and thankful that we'll be able to support our trained professionals a little bit more and have a better lineup and if you will, menu for your employees to recognize their talents and accomplishments and have a more professional trained staff. So thank you.
One of the things that's in the long brief was pay compression. And that's one of the things that we noticed out of the compensation study. So somebody who had been with us several years was above that market average. And those market averages that you saw were entry level. So the people who had the least amount of experience with us got something out of the compensation study and moved closer in pay to the people who had been here longer. Now, the advantage of being here longer is you've had more time to work on these lists of classes. So I don't think that we will eradicate the pay compression. I still think we need to work on that in the FY24 budget, but I think we take a step towards reducing that compression.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Mr. Smith.
Quick question, thanks for this proposal. I think it's a a great sign of the commitment that to develop the quality and depth of the profession that EMTs and firefighters are providing this community. Often when you're in front of us, the ISO topic is continually brought forward. Does this help significantly with our ISO rating?
It helps in that training points are a part of that ISO formula. And that was one of our weakest areas in the last grading. Just because of our records, we've since purchased a records management system that helps us to score that and prints out a report in a format that's acceptable to them. But every time one of those firefighters now has an incentive to go take more training, it's added to that training database and it bolsters that report that ISO will look for in their 4 or 5 year reviews.
Great.
Are you looking for a motion that we approve this?
Yes, sir.
All right, before I'd like to make that motion, but before I do, Chief, since you brought the 3 individuals, Mr. Emery, Mr. Harlow, Mr. Spencer, if either of you wanted to say anything, I'd invite you, since the chief said you all did the work. And before if you say something, I just want to express my appreciation as a citizen with kids in our schools. You hear me say this, I never miss an opportunity to uplift our fire department, our first responders, because you don't just cover the city of Lexington, you cover outside of Lexington, you cover Buena Vista, you cover Lilburn, Waddell, Central, Moy River. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And the peace of mind that you provide to families and parents, you have no idea. And so I appreciate that. And that's why I never miss one of your banquets. As long as you invite me, I will be there. And so if you want to say something, please do. And then I'd love to make this motion that we approve and implement this plan.
Thank you, Councilman. I think that the fire chief summed it up perfectly as far as breaking down everything that's in here. But this plan, not only, like he said, is helping from kind of the infancy of the career that's been here for 11 years, but this is still very modular. So this can be in place for another 5, 10, 15 years and continue to be built on and, perfected for what the fire service looks like. And who knows, maybe by the time I retire, we never know. And so we take a lot of pride in what we were able to accomplish with this incentive and training pay. And, we're very gracious for, the wonderful support you all have had, towards us for the many, many years. And, the 6 years I've been here, it's been wonderful. So we thank you all.
Ryan grew up right here locally, volunteered for us and was hired pretty soon after high school. Matt grew up here locally and worked for the Department of Forestry and came on board when we started with career firefighters. Wes grew up here locally in Rockbridge, Bass, and had a job with a much larger department in Roanoke County and chose to come to work for the city of Lexington as a firefighter. Great skills.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to make a motion that we approve and implement a career development program for the personnel within the Lexington Fire and EMS Department.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not roll call vote. Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Mr. Ayers,
Aye.
Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you on behalf of a grateful city and a grateful council for all the work that you do. And may you have an evening that is, no, I'm not supposed to say quiet, but a quiet evening. Thank you all for being here and come back and visit us anytime. Next item on our agenda is closed meeting, which we do not have scheduled. And before we wind up, I just wanted to again welcome Jeremy and thank you for sitting in with us this evening and the work that you'll be doing in the future. Mayors and chairs met yesterday, and we continue to have good dialogue with the city of Buena Vista and Rockbridge County, and along the theme of giving thankful to have the opportunity to work with those folks and conversations that we have and things that we can collaborate on to make our community a better place, a safer place, and enjoy that. Grateful for our city employees and all the work that they do tirelessly. I can't imagine the number of things that planning and ARB and others have worked on this calendar year. And lastly, for city council, the good work that you all do, the first and third Thursdays officially here. And much like our fire department, nobody knows the work that you do in preparation of these meetings and carrying out the work of our community. And certainly those of you who were recently elected, the work it takes to put yourself up and in front of the public to be considered and elected. So thank you all, and wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and we will stand adjourned. Good.
Thank you.